Welcome back to Balmer's Workshop, and thanks so much for joining me here once again. It's always nice to have you back. This time we're focusing on the Vitara, the 1999 to 2003 variant, I believe that generation covers. And what we're going to be looking at specifically is the 4x4Art lift kit that has become quite popular, as well as my bumpers, both front and rear. I hope you don't have a lot of wind noise going on. It is quite windy today, but I do have my little windsock on my nice new microphone, so hopefully it's doing its job. Anyway, we'll have a little walk around. We'll look at the suspension a little bit. We'll check out the bumpers, and then we'll go inside, put it on the hoist, and you can have a much more in-depth look at the suspension, and we'll go over all the components and talk about availability and different things like that, or at least availability in our area here in Canada, BC, and worldwide actually, because it's a product from Turkey. That's where it comes from, Turkey, who have recently changed the spelling of their name, interestingly enough. So this vehicle has the 4x4Art 3-inch extreme lift in it. To me, it looks a lot more than 3 inches. I don't know how you feel about that, if you've driven or looked at a stock-sized Vitara or a Vitara without a lift kit. This is sitting on 235 60/16 tires, which I believe are pretty much stock, and it's a serious lift. Once he puts some oversized tires on this thing, I'm going to guess he's going to go to probably 31s, maybe 32s. It's going to have quite the stance on it. As you'll see when we put it up on the hoist, it's a well-used kit, but it's not beaten or anything like that, but not something that I installed. And it's not one that he's totally thrilled with. He'd be happier with a 2-inch kit, I think. He's an older guy. He finds it to be just too high of a ride, a little bit unstable on the freeway, according to him. I've actually put a word out to the Suzuki group that I'm a part of online to try to get feedback on this same kit in terms of both the on-road and off-road stability and handling and performance characteristics of this kit. So stay tuned at the end of the video for that. I'll try to do a decent wrap-up with a few opinions coming together rather than just my own, since I haven't actually wheeled this. All I can really tell you is how the kit looks and whether or not I'm impressed by the components of it. I'm also trying to get some feedback on the installation to see whether there's any mods needed. According to the company, there are none. They say no drilling, no welding, bolt straight up. But you know, that's sometimes true, sometimes not. Sometimes you've got to mod things in order to make them work. So let's hope that we hear back from some of the people on this group as to whether or not there were any mods needed, or whether it was super challenging to get the kit installed, or hopefully that it went in slick and easy as a breeze. So anyway, moving on to my bumper just for the moment before we go on to the hoist. This is my front bumper for the Vitaras. As you can see, there's the marker light has been moved up from the bumper into the fender. I no longer have it located in the bumper as it is in stock, because I like to keep my tubes solid. This bumper is constructed from 2x2 tube over here, and then the rest of it is 2x5 tube, and it's all fully welded and sealed, so it's a nice sealed unit. I don't want to have any holes in it for lights because we wind up with water ingress and rust and other issues in the future rather. Now, having said that, I do have holes going through it for these tow bar mounts, which will allow some water in over time, and there are a couple of drain holes just underneath here on the hoist. You'll see that as well. But again, I like to keep my tubing as solid as possible. If I had a hole up here, you've got water coming in and running the whole way through the bumper, where basically here you're gonna get a very, very small amount in through the bolt holes and straight out through the drain, so not nearly as big an issue. It has a 2-inch receiver, standard to most of my Suzuki bumpers and small vehicle bumpers, so that you can pop a temporary winch in there on a cradle or any other receiver mounted device you wanted to put in there. One of my customers even did some snow plowing with his, and I actually have a separate video of that. Maybe we'll have a look at that one day. Underneath the bumper is a skid plate that you probably can't see very well at all, but once we get it on the hoist, you'll get a better look at that. 3/16 skid plate with my logo plasma cut into it, and it gives a nice clean look and protects the radiator, of course. Now, the vehicle comes stock with one tie-down loop or safety chain loop, and I've added another one, and these are what the safety chains for the tow bar will attach to. Nice to have a separate location directly welded to the frame, rather than going to the same mounts that or the same object to which the mounts are attached when you're towing. What else can I tell you about this thing? It is finished typically the way that most of my bumpers are, or most all of my bumpers are, by sandblasting, priming with a rust-resistant fusion bonded primer, and then coating with a textured black powder coat to finish it off. A great finish, and it lasts a very long time. So with this bumper, obviously you got a radically improved departure angle, rock solid stability. I mean, again, it's made out of rectangle tube, so it's absolutely rock solid. It's got some top plates welded in here to fill the gaps underneath the headlights. Otherwise you would see a little gap in there, since this tube is only 2 inches wide. In fact, you can see here there's just a very small gap. Some guys choose to put a light bar in here. This customer didn't. So you see a little bit of a gap, but really not an issue in my opinion, and hopefully you don't think so either. And let's talk about the Balmer Fab rear bumper for the 99 to 03 Suzuki Vitara. This is the design I'm particularly proud of. I think that the sides here are nicely sculpted and they match the vehicle lines really, really well. The sides are very solid. They're 10 gauge and they're braced back to the bumper here, which is made out of 2x6, similar to the front, only the front's 2x5. And then it's got a checkered steel top plate on the top as well. So you got a nice finish and a place to step if you're gonna get up to the roof or something. In this case, it's a soft top, so very unlikely you're gonna be getting up to the roof. But with a hard top, you might have a roof rack on there. And in fact, you could put a roof rack on a soft top as well, but that's for another video. Anyway, it gives you access to the roof and gives you a nice clean look. I'll show you how that looks when I open up the swing arm in just a minute. Replacing your rear bumper with one of these gives you not only a much better departure angle, but a built-in 2-inch receiver with safety chain plate, which gives you also a much better departure angle in the center of the vehicle versus bolting on a aftermarket trailer hitch with your stock bumper. So a nice solution for clearance, and cleans up the lines of the vehicle, looks great, and gives you a place to put your tire. Whenever you go to an oversized tire, it's not a great idea to mount it to the door because it's very hard on the hinges. This vehicle will be getting an oversized tire shortly. This is my shortened swing arm version, so the latch sits here on this side of the license plate. I can do an extended version where the latch sits over here. Maybe I'll show you a picture of one of those. But that will be able to incorporate a fuel can holder as well, or a shovel holder, a high lift jack mount, or even a fold-up table possibly. I haven't done one of those yet on one of these. It looks like we've got enough clearance looking at it now, but it would be tight. But there's even chance I could put a fold-up table on it, similar to my Xterra rear bumpers, if you've seen my Xterra rear bumper video. It's a nice option. It'd be cool to have on here, but again, I haven't tried that one out. But there definitely is the option of a fuel can holder, high lift jack mount, or shovel mount. When we do those things, especially the fuel can holder, we move the spare tire over as far as we can towards the passenger side tail light so that we can fit the fuel can holder in here, and then, like I said, the latch moves over to here and everything fits in just tightly. But in this case, because we weren't adding all that, we centered the tire up. Now in doing that, I have occluded or covered the third brake light just a little bit. I gave the customer the option of lifting that up with a modified mount, but he wasn't worried about it at all, so that's the customer's choice in that case. But we certainly could lift that third brake light up to give great visibility of it and keep things super legal for those who would want that. But anyway, let's have a look now at the swing arm and the way that works, and then we'll open up the rear door, show you how the top plate looks, and then we'll talk about that suspension system just a little bit more. So opening the swing arm is just as simple as putting a little bit of pressure forward on the latch and then opening up the T-handle here. The reason for putting a little pressure forward on it is because it's held in place with a nice rubber buffer, and it gives there's a little pressure applied backwards on it to keep everything tight and rattle free during driving. As you can see there, no rattles, nice and tight. So you just pull on the T-handle, push that guy forward, the T-handle pops open, lower your latch, and simply open the swing arm. And there's another T-handle back there that will drop into place, as you see, and it holds the swing arm open. Now if you wanted to open it even more than that, you certainly can. You can lift that up and open it even further, but there's really no need because the door only opens up so far. So if I open the door up, you can see that there's plenty of room, and away we go. Now let's have a better look. I'll take you off of the tripod and we'll have a better look at this top plate and that radius plate that holds the swing arm in position. And there's a better look at that top plate. So you can see it's nice and form-fitting, fits into the recesses there and around the mount for the gas cylinder which operates the door. Checkered steel for a nice look, as well as a little bit of grip if you were to get up to the roof to do anything. Get that dirt off there. And again, the 3/4 inch recovery points, nice clean welds. Those are multi-pass welds for a nice stable recovery point. Here's one of your mounting points that goes through the bumper and into a welded point on the vehicle. That's a grade 8 1/2 inch bolt, and of course it's the same on the other side. Again, 2-inch receiver with safety chain plate. That same sandblasted, primed and textured finish. And if we move over here, we can have a better look at that radius plate. So you can see there the spring-loaded T-handle has dropped into position on the radius plate, locking the swing arm into its position so that the door, even if it was to swing with a little bit of force, will never ever collide with the swing arm, but the swing arm doesn't open any further than it really needs to, so that if there are obstacles on this side of the vehicle, such as other vehicles or a house or whatever, it won't swing any farther out than necessary and gives you the maximum amount of clearance. Now on the bottom side of this swing arm is a little UHMW buffer. That's to slide on the top of the checker plate to prevent any abrasion there. But when you close this doesn't actually contact it. Only once you clamp the latch down does this contact. When you close it with the normal weight of the tire on there, you'll have about a 1/16 of an inch clearance. And then of course we've got a little rubber bumper, which is what provides that bit of back pressure on the swing arm to keep everything rattle free like I described. And closing the swing arm is of course just the reverse procedure of opening it. Pull out the swing arm, allow it to lock into the handle, and you're done. So a couple more notes about the suspension kit before we go inside look at it on the hoist and have a better look at all the components. This is definitely an older kit. It's all the components, I don't know if you can see the spring in there, are red. They're only offered now in either yellow or black. So knowing that they're red may help us to date this kit. If anybody has information on that, I'd love to hear it in the comments. But it's definitely an older kit. This is the 3-inch Extreme kit, which again to me looks more like a 4-inch lift, but this is the one they call the 3-inch Extreme. The difference between the 3-inch kit and the 3-inch Extreme kit is that with the Extreme version you get all new rear links. And what those do is they push the axle 3/4 of an inch or about 2 centimeters rearward, and that allows you to keep your tire centered in the wheel well so that you can go to as large a tire as you possibly can. Now they're quoting a 33 to 34 inch tire on these if you do a body lift and trim your fenders as well. Now most people don't want to do fender trimming, but some do, so potentially all the way up to a 34-inch tire with this kit. But I would say with just your body lift, no trimming, you'd probably be looking at a 32 or a 33-inch. And with no body lift at all, you're probably going to be at about a 31-inch tire, but still significantly larger than this. I think a 35/60/16 sits at about 27.5 inches in diameter. So even a 31, is considerably larger and is going to fill that out really well. And still allow you for a lot of, for a lot of up travel. One thing I question about these kits and that I hope to hear about with the feedback is the down travel limitations, because as you'll see when we put it on the hoist, the suspension really doesn't drop much at all. And it's nice to have some down travel in your kit. So I'm interested again to hear some feedback on that one, to see if there's any limitations with that. I guess basically if you throw lockers into the situation, it's going to help things a lot. But when you don't have a lot of down travel, it tends to want to lift wheels. And if you've got open diffs, then you're going to lose traction very quickly. So again, super curious to hear feedback on that at the end of the video. Hopefully somebody will have given me something to tell you. But let's go inside, put it on the hoist, and have a look at this thing component by component and give you a better feel of the kit itself. All right, so now that we're in the shop, we will go ahead and put this vehicle up on the hoist. But before I actually do that, I want to get the camera situated on the suspension while we begin the lift. And by lift, I mean begin raising it on the hoist. Reason for that is because kits that are built for independent suspension vehicles, which this has independent front suspension, when those kits exceed a 2-inch lift, they tend to have very little down travel left in them. The way that the company gets the 2+ inches of lift out of it is to use up that down travel. Now in this case, there's been new front control arms added, which should kind of counter that effect. But I want to see exactly how much down travel is left in this suspension when we lift it. So I'll put you on a tripod and we'll try to kind of situate the camera in such a way where you can see the front suspension. That's most important because it's independent, but also the rear. So I'll kind of put you something like this if I can get a tripod to sit here. And then we'll have a look at the way the suspension reacts when we lift the vehicle off the ground and see exactly how much down travel we do have. So rather than a tripod, I have a trusty assistant, and she will attempt to hold the camera steady as we lift this thing up. So let's take a look at the down travel. So that's actually not insignificant. I would say that was probably 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches of down travel on the front. And by my estimation, the rear was more than that. I don't know how much more, but I was paying more attention to this, but the rear definitely dropped more than that. So, you know, in my opinion, that's actually pretty good for a kit that lifts the vehicle 3 inches, and it looks like more than 3 inches to me. It's a pretty solid lift kit. To allow 2 inches of drop is very good. So I find that encouraging. Let's move on to looking at some of these components once we get it up a little higher. All right, so now that we are up on the hoist, we can give you a little better look at the old Balmer Fab skid plate here. That mounts in 4 places to the Balmer Fab bumper with 3/8 grade 8 hardware. It has the logo emblazoned in the front so everybody knows how cool you are. And it also has some access ports to reach the receiver. The receiver pin is on the back side of the bumper. Reason being is I didn't want to have the receiver sticking out. It just kind of looks awkward. Some people do prefer that. It gives much easier access to that receiver pin. So for those who want that, I can custom do that for you. But generally speaking, the receiver pin is in behind, and that's why we have these access ports. The skid plate is made from 3/16 mild steel, and it mounts into stock locations in the vehicle subframe underneath here. Thanks for the light. Form fitting comes nice and close to the radiator, as you can see there, but not too close. There's those through frame bolts that you can see that secure the front bumper, and that is how we can be absolutely sure that we've got the most rock solid mount on the entire market. Again, 1/4 inch thick mounts with 1/2 inch grade 8 hardware securing them, and through frame tubes preventing any crushage of that frame. There's that secondary safety chain loop that I welded on for the customer so that his safety chains can go to some solid points on the frame when he's towing this vehicle behind another. And now we shall move on to the 4x4ART suspension system. So the 4x4 3-inch Extreme lift kit consists of front struts, front control arms, front springs, and more. I'll put you up a little higher on the hoist and we'll take a look at the rest. So in addition to the strut, the control arm, and the spring, we also have a diff drop, which is right here, diff drop bracket, and another one there. And we've also got an extension for the CV shaft on this side of the vehicle, whereas this side remains, it looks like stock. Again, I didn't install this kit, so I don't know all of the intricacies, but I believe that's what we're looking at. These control arms do feature tabs. Let's go back here. They do feature tabs for a sway bar to go into, but there is no sway bar installed on this vehicle. At least I do believe that's what those are for. Now the customer has complained that this vehicle is a little wandery on the freeway. Maybe if a sway bar was added, it would help with that. Again, at the end of the video, I will try to give you some feedback from the people who are actually running these kits to tell you whether that's the case or not. As we move to the rear of the vehicle, you see that a drive shaft spacer has been installed to allow for the extra flex in the suspension, extra travel in the suspension. Here's our rear control arms, and they've got a nice angle bent in them to keep the control arms clear of obstacles. That's a really nice design. I like that a lot. We've got bushings rather than, what do you call them? Bushings rather than creeper joints or like rod ends on the ends here, and same for up in the frame. Now, I think on the newer kits, at least these ends are like a ball and socket type, like a rod end style, which will give you a little more flex on that end. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Check out their website. Here we've got just a kind of a standard shock absorber. You can see the bushings are shot on this. So again, it kind of points to the age of this kit. Like I said, this is in red paint where they only offer it in yellow or black now. So I'd be curious to see if anybody can kind of date that kit for me based on that. I'd really appreciate that in the comments. Again, you can see the spring up in there, an extended spring for the lift, and then also an extension on the track bar. Now this is a point of contention for the owner. In fact, I bet I can actually make this thing move. So what happens is it's mounted only by the one location here, so you can tell that when you start applying some pressures to this, the bracket wants to move like that. And in fact, if you look very, very carefully around this bracket, you'll see that there has been movement because there's a bit of a gap there, and the dirt is kind of cleared away in a little bit of an area. And furthermore, if we look here, you can see that this bracket has been kind of misshapen slightly against the shoulder there. And the reason is because this thing has been moving slightly in travel. I'll get Judy to hold the camera if you could at the same time. And I'm going to see if I can just swing this axle and get any kind of movement out of that. Do you see anything? So I can't see right now while I'm doing this, but hopefully you can see that there's some movement in there. I'll take the camera again, thanks dear.
I was seeing it more there.
Yeah, so as long as you can see it anywhere in this bracket, you can tell, like, this thing needs to be held dead solid, and it isn't. So I think that's a potential weak point in this system. For this customer, what we're gonna do is remove the bracket, knock off the powder coat, clean up this bracket, and just weld a bead around there so it's nice and solid for him. I think that's gonna be the simplest solution. But it's something that the manufacturers of this kit may want to look at. This end of the track bar is stock, and that's that. So that's the kit in a nutshell. Extended springs, extended shocks, and the track bar bracket in the rear. And here is the heart and soul of all of the Suzuki Sidekick and Vitara lifts that are beyond 2 inches. The front lower control arm. I say lower, it only has a lower control arm because it's a strut arrangement, so there is no upper control arm. But the point is, this needs to be reconfigured to go beyond a 2-inch lift, and that's what 4x4Art has done here. So this consists of tubing, which is 1.75-inch diameter tube. I don't know the wall thickness. I don't know if it's ERW or DOM, but obviously it's up to the task. I'm going to guess it's probably 120 wall and possibly DOM, but I don't know that. All of the bracing and webbing in here is all 1/4 inch, so very, very stout. It uses bushings, stock bushings here, and there's some plating over the mount there to protect it even more, to reinforce it, and that's very nice. It uses a stock lower ball joint, and it, as previously mentioned, moves the front wheel forward by about 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters to keep that wheel centered in the wheel well so that you can go to as large a tire as possible. It incorporates the diff drop, as we've talked about, and it also is going to move the wheel outwards and change that camber a little bit so you don't wind up with a really radical camber issue, and so that you wind up with the track width exactly correct at the front of the vehicle, just like it is at the rear. So again, this has been accomplished by means of a reconstructed control arm, similar to what Calmini or Altered Ego uses. This one's been put together very, very well, and it looks like a great design to me. We have the diff drop brackets, we have the extended springs, and we have the struts. Now, I know that there are coilover options instead of going with springs and struts as well for these, which would be a really cool kit to see. I'd love to check that out. I think that's the case for both front and rear that the coilovers are, but now that I say that, I'm wondering if it's actually only offered for the rear. I'll have to check the website better and maybe get back to you on that later in this video. But kind of cool that they have some options there for your different types of shock absorbers, different types of shock absorber systems when you go to a coilover. And they've got these great lower control arms and the diff drop. You might also notice this vehicle has a cast iron diff rather than the aluminum one, so a nice upgrade there as well. But that's the kit. I hope you like it. Let's go back to the office and sit at the desk and chat about the feedback that I got from all those folks in the Suzuki groups, shall we? So now that we've had a good look at those bumpers and the suspension kit, both outside and up on the hoist, let's clear up a couple of the comments I made during the video, and then we'll have a look at what everybody else has to say about these kits. So I had mentioned that there may be an option for the rear lower control arm to have a rod end or a Heim joint, creeper joint style joint on the axle side. The reason that I thought that is because if you go on the 4x4Art website, you'll see that there's some pictures that scroll on the bottom just showing some of their product features. And one of those is a control arm which features one of these styles of joints. But when I went back on there to try to clarify this, I tried clicking on that picture. You can't do so, so it doesn't bring you to a page which features that. And within the kit for the Grand Vitara, I don't see that joint as an option. So the lower control arm is going to have rubber bushings on both ends. That was my mistake. The other thing I mentioned that I was wrong about was the option to have coilovers rather than struts and in the back shocks. I don't know where that idea came from. I must have been having a fever dream or something. But there is an option for rear adjustable shock absorbers by Koni, but otherwise there's no option for coilovers at all. So I was just wrong about that. But let's have a look at what the people from the local Suzuki group have to say about the 4x4Art kit as well as some of the competition. So this comes from Tino. He is a local wheeler, and he has had kits from 4x4Art, from Altered Ego, as well as from Calmini. So his opinion is definitely valuable here. And he says that the 4x4Art kit seems to be better built than the competition. The ride is firm without being overly firm. It's more inclusive and well thought out. He points out that it includes longer tie rod ends. I'm guessing that if you have stock tie rod ends, you wind up a little bit towed in. So they've gone the extra mile and included even some longer tie rod ends to alleviate that issue. He is hoping that his ball joints will last longer than they have with other kits, but this kit is too new at this point to know, so that's yet to be seen. And he points out that when dealing with Calmini, he had terrible customer service and waited forever for his parts. From what I've heard, that's one of the best possible results when you deal with Calmini. I'm not here to slander other companies, but I have had literally dozens of customers who have dealt with Calmini in the past who have very awful things to say about their customer service. While their kits may be pretty decent, their customer service is terrible in that they don't respond to customers, they don't ship parts in a timely manner, and sometimes they don't ship parts at all even after having taken the money. This is not hearsay, this is absolutely solid information that's come from, again, dozens of different people. So if you're going to deal with them, do be cautious. Tim Lamming points out, and Tim is actually our local distributor for the 4x4Art kit, he points out that he's running them on both his XL7 and his second gen two-door. They're the extreme versions of the kits. Ride-wise, he says they take approximately 2 weeks for the springs to settle in, and then they have a fantastic ride quality. He says both vehicles run without front sway bars, and he has no roll on the two-door and a little bit of roll on the XL7, which reasonably should be expected with a heavier vehicle. He says install-wise, everything went in without too much hassle. Front spring compression was the trickiest thing, he says, and he points out that you should have the pigtails, the top pigtails, pointed out towards the wheel when you go to put them in. He says that it's a subtle change, but it does make a big difference in terms of being able to seat to those springs properly. What else can I tell you? Neil Stevens, he is the founder of the the Suzuki 4x4 group, I believe. He says he's heard negative things about both. He's heard that a guy out of the States ordered a 4x4Art kit, and when it arrived, the paint was coming off. He had ordered it black powder coated, but they just spray painted it black because their kits are coated yellow. So that's kind of an extreme situation. If the guy wanted a different color on his kit and all they did was paint it, you know, not the greatest way to go about it, but really not a big issue in the end of, you know, it's not the end of the world. The quality of the kit itself was good, it just was painted poorly. So that's the complaint there. One of his local members, or the Suzuki Group local members, bought a lift kit from 4x4Art, and they sent him a sidekick lift, not a Vitara lift like he wanted. That's because in most of the rest of the world, the first gens are called Vitaras, not sidekicks, and the second gens are called Grand Vitaras. We're going to go over that in just a little bit, so just hang on with that one. But again, it's not an issue with the company, not an issue with the company at all. That's the customer's issue, and the paint, you know, I think is pretty forgivable. Let's go on to see what else he has to say. The 4.5-inch lift by Altered Ego has a lot of happy customers in the group, but some problems with the 4.5-inch lift include springs sagging out, sagging unevenly. The front diff bracket can be weak and tends to break. Apparently, Altered Ego claims that it's to save your aluminum diff housing from breaking. For an extra charge, they can provide you with a heavy-duty one. That seems kind of weird to me, but I don't want to get too deep into that. It's not something I've dealt with personally, so it's just hearsay to me. He is saying that the customer service is poor with Altered Ego, and again with Cal Mini. So I guess 4x4Art has the edge in terms of customer service in his opinion. A response to his comments is that, again, this person's basically backing me up on the fact that the paint is not that big a deal. He says they cheap painted the kit for a guy, but that's about it. Otherwise, it's a very solid kit, and I agree. Whereas with the Altered Ego ones, the complaints are numerous and more serious, being that it's to do with brackets breaking, rear links being too short to allow 33-inch tires to be installed as they advertise, and some other issues he mentions here. So he again is leaning towards 4x4Art over Altered Ego. Here's another guy, Ray. He says that he has the 4x4Art kit on his 99 Vitara. He's very happy with it and would recommend it. He says he did his research on the Altered Ego kit and went for the 4x4Art kit, and is happy he did so because when he compared the height of his 3-inch lift to another customer's 4.5-inch kit, his sat higher. Now, a response to that is, yeah, but your rig is nothing like that one. He has front and rear steel bumpers, rock sliders, a tire carrier, and skid plates, when yours is bare. So that's a very good point. Of course, all of that weight is going to drop that 4.5-inch lift kit a little bit. But I think that the kits by Altered Ego, the 4.5-inch kit, is overrated. I don't think it actually does sit at 4.5 inches of lift. And I think that the 3-inch kit by 4x4Art is underrated. I think it sits more than 3 inches of lift. But I haven't installed these kits, so I don't have before and after accurate measurements that I've taken myself to go by. So again, it's mostly hearsay and what I can see myself from the kits that have been through the shop. But by and large, I would say that the 3-inch Extreme kit from 4x4Art seems to be a very capable and well-built kit. It offers some massive benefits, not only over a stock setup, but also over some of the competition, as we've just heard. It seems like the spring rates are better than the competition in terms of compromise between on-road stability and off-road flexibility. Those spring rates seem to stay very consistent over time, where there's been some issues with the other companies in that way. In regards to that, the common complaint I've heard about the Cal Mini springs is that they're far too stiff on the road and give a super rough ride, whereas the Altered Ego springs tend to be a little too soft and unstable on the road and settle in inconsistently. And personally, I've actually had a vehicle in with the Altered Ego 4.5-inch kit on it. One corner of the vehicle measured 1 inch higher than the other corner of the vehicle. So definitely some uneven settling there. So that's something to be concerned about. The 4x4Art kit seems to be really good in that regard. Very, very stable and predictable settling. Now, If you're going to be ordering one of these kits, it's important that you understand that these guys are in Turkey. Most of the world outside of North America calls the Suzuki Vitara, calls this vehicle the Vitara in its first generation. So 1989 to 1998 is the Vitara, and 1999 to 2003 is the Grand Vitara. In North America, we know the first generation as a sidekick, a tracker, a sunrunner, or even some other variants, whereas the second generation is Vitara or Grand Vitara, depending on its trim level. So go with the European guidelines, which are, again, first gen is a Vitara, second gen is a Grand Vitara. Don't order the wrong kit. So now let's finish up the video by having a look at the 4x4Art 3-inch Extreme Lift Kit in action. Thanks for joining me here at Balmer's Workshop. Great to have you back. We'll see you again next time.